Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into Where There's a Will. Hope all of you had a wonderful Christmas and Happy New Year to you as well. 2024 is here, I feel like I'm ready to just mail it in for 2025. You know what I'm saying? No, I'm kidding. But I I got sick on Christmas Day, like the night of Christmas Day, um, and then basically the rest of that week, like I had to take the day off of work the following day. Went back to work Wednesday, Thursday, and just felt like crap. I'm still not feeling amazing, but I could not talk at all last week. So here we are getting a pod out to you. Today, I want to talk about the horrible officiating in the Cowboys-Lions game, the Monday Night Football special that was on Saturday night. And then also stuff about Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos, him being benched because of his contract. Is he going to be with the Broncos next year? Who knows? Let's talk about it. Let's start with the gaff on Monday Night Football. Detroit Lions, Dallas Cowboys. Dallas won 20-19, but really the story are the last two drives of the game, two major missed calls, or not necessarily missed calls, but just wrong calls. So on Dallas's last drive with a couple minutes left, they had an opportunity to run out the clock. There was a tripping call called on Peyton Hendershot, Cowboys backup tight end, and really the call wasn't supposed to be on Hendershot. It was Aiden Hutchinson who threw his leg out there trying to trip Tony Pollard. So they got that call very wrong. That backed up Dallas 15 yards. And then, of course, Mike McCarthy's play calling is something else. I mean, he might be the worst play caller in not even play caller, but just like situationally calling plays. He's just not very good with time management. You're supposed to run the football there with a couple minutes left and just, if you're going to throw the ball, it's got to be something short. It's got to be a screen. Get the ball out quick. You're not trying to go for the kill shot unless it's absolutely wide open, a play you're 100% sure is going to work. You don't need to go for the kill shot. Just make Detroit use their timeouts and take as much time off as possible. And Mike McCarthy didn't do that. Decided to throw on back-to-back plays, second and third down, and that left Detroit with an extra 40 seconds of time. Nonetheless, though, that penalty didn't help matters. Had that penalty been called the other way on Detroit, Dallas more than likely would have run out the rest of the clock. The game would have been over, and we wouldn't have had the even bigger call that happened minutes later for Detroit, who, made it all the way down the field in 3 or 4 plays. They score. And Dan Campbell is the most aggressive coach in the NFL when it comes to going forward on fourth down, especially in the opponent's territory. Went forward on fourth down in the red zone inside the 5 yard line a couple times. Went forward on a fourth down, fake punt early in the game. He's very, very aggressive. Decides to go for two to win the game. And Taylor Decker caught the 2 point conversion to put Detroit up. And Brad Allen and that officiating crew said Taylor Decker did not report. And I know so many people have been talking about this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I don't want to sound like I'm beating a dead horse here, but certainly the video evidence does suggest that Taylor Decker walked over there with Penei Sewell to tell the official, I'm reporting as eligible. But of course, Dan Skipper is also checking in as an extra offensive lineman into the game as well. He is also running over to that huddle with the official. What I think happened was Decker walked over there, of course, to tell the officials that he was reporting. But I think the official thought that Decker was telling the official that Skipper was reporting as eligible. And so I don't think he was paying attention to what was going on, because then immediately after that, he walks over to the Dallas defense and tells them that number 70 is reporting as eligible. So what does Dallas do? They defend the play as if 70 is going to potentially be getting the ball. And that's why Taylor Decker was so wide open in the back of the end zone to catch that 2 point conversion. So I think the official just got confused. Detroit is doing the right thing, sending multiple players over there because, you know, you don't want to give Dallas an idea of who is reporting as eligible, although they'll find out anyway when the official announces it. Because that's the thing, that the official not only went over and told Dallas, he then announced it to the crowd that number 70 was reporting as eligible, and Detroit did not pay any attention to that. I'm not saying that that's their fault, but they didn't pay attention to that. They didn't make sure that the right player was checked in as eligible, but the officials got to do a better job of making the right call. Now, do I feel bad for Detroit? Absolutely not. I do not feel bad for Detroit because as a Cowboys fan, that call has gone against us so many times over the last 20, 25 years. It's great to get one every now and then. So I'll take a call. We have the worst call maybe in NFL playoff history uh, against us. The Dez Bryant catch no catch against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers back in 2014. That was probably the Cowboys' best chance to win a Super Bowl over the last 25 years. Is that game right there, that year? Dallas was undefeated on the road in the regular season, and that catch by Dez, they would have scored on the following play with DeMarco Murray, the leading rusher that year in the backfield. They would have beat Green Bay, gone to Seattle, and who they beat in Seattle earlier in the regular season probably would have beat them, and that would have set up a Dallas New England Super Bowl. And so I don't feel bad for Detroit fans. I know that Detroit, they're having an incredible season. It's their best season since the 90s when they last won the division. Dan Campbell should be coach of the year. Like they're a great team, but and they're having a great year. But I don't feel bad because we've had that call go against us so many times. It is what it is. Now officiating has been remarkably bad this year. That crew has been involved in two of the other worst officiated games this year. The Chiefs Packers game with that really bad missed pass interference call on MVS, and then also, the Chiefs-Bills game where Kadarius Toney was lined up offsides. Now, that was clearly a foul, clearly a penalty, but whether or not that officiating crew had been giving him warnings, who knows? We'll never know. But this officiating crew, very bad, and they've been demoted. They're not going to be participating in the playoffs, not going to be officiating any playoff games, rightfully so. They're very bad. I'm happy the call went our way. Do I feel bad for Detroit? I do not, because I've been on the other side of that too many times. And you know what? Sometimes it's nice to get a call. Now, over to Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos, with this contract situation being benched basically around their bye week, middle of the season. Denver approached Russell Wilson about, you know, adjusting his contract so that Denver could be more financially flexible. Um, and he said no. And Denver said, if you don't, we will bench you. And of course, that's violation. Like the NFL and the NFL Players Association got involved. That's violation of Russ's contract that Denver decided to sign. And it's violation of New York law to use benching him as a threat, to not change his contract. And it's violation of the NFL Player Association's policies and everything. It's not great for Denver. I understand why they want to do it because Russell Wilson hasn't been the Seattle Russ since he's been traded to the Broncos. Obviously, last year was a disaster. This year, Russ does look a lot better. He's not as dynamic as he was in years past. That's obvious. And at that price tag, him making as much money as he is, um, I mean, his contract is a 5-year, $242 million contract that starts after this season. And so Denver will owe Wilson $39 million in 2024, but then they'll also owe an additional $37 million for 2025 after I think March 17th. And so that's what Denver was trying to get moved, was that date of owing him that $37 million. I believe it was an injury guarantee or something like that. They wanted to move that date. Russ said no. They promptly benched him a couple weeks later. And it seems like Russ's time in Denver is done. Before I get to maybe potential destinations, I do want to point out something. I mean, Russell Wilson although he's not the Russell Wilson of old, I don't think he's having a terrible season. He's thrown for 3,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, 8 picks, a 66% completion percentage, and he has a 98 passer rating, which is seventh in the NFL. Let's compare that to this quarterback. We'll do a little blind resume for you. So this quarterback it has a 67% completion percentage. So that's 1% higher than Russ. 4,183 yards, so 1,000 more yards than Russ. So moves the ball a lot more through the air, but 27 touchdowns, 14 picks, and a 92.6 passer rating. That quarterback is the best quarterback in football, Patrick Mahomes. Russell Wilson is having a better year in almost every statistical category minus passing yards. Um, and so maybe that's where the problem lies for Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos is that they don't have that deep playability anymore. Russ used to be one of the best deep ball throws in the league, and he doesn't throw it nearly as much anymore. I don't know if he's lost some arm strength. I don't know if it's he's just not seeing those throws down the field. I don't know what it is, but he hasn't had a terrible season. It's just at that price tag, you want him to be playing like Seattle Russ, and he just hasn't been. And so Russell Wilson is, I would imagine, going to be cut. I don't think a team is going to be willing to trade for part of that contract because I don't think Denver's not going to want to eat all of it. They can't eat all of it. Um, a team I don't think is going to be willing to trade for some of that money. And I don't know if they want to give up even a mid-round pick for Russ. I think Denver is just going to cut him when it comes to that March deadline and only have to pay him that $37 million next year, plus what other dead cap money there may be on the contract. I think it's like $85 million. And then I think Russ, the ideal destinations, Atlanta comes to mind because they have some really good skill players, a good offensive line, and maybe a veteran quarterback can come in there and make things happen for a couple years before you draft a new quarterback. Pittsburgh stands out. It's a defensive culture. They've got good weapons on offense, and maybe Mike Tomlin is just like, hey, just get me a veteran, get me a guy that has some star power, has a brand, bring Russ into Pittsburgh. And Tennessee has also been thrown out there as well. I'm not sure how good of a fit that is, given that they have Will Levis. Maybe you want to give him a full year of starting. I'm not sure, but um, Russ, I think he's definitely done in Denver, and I still think he has a little something in the tank if you find the right situation with really good weapons and ideally an offensive coach who can maybe get Russ throwing the ball a bit down the field again. But with that, we are going to. So this show is called Where There's a Will, and we're going to start a new segment. Where there's a will, there's a story. So we're going to bring in my brother, Ethan Ford, to tell us some stories here on Where There's a Will. Ethan, how are you, man?
Hey, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good, buddy. Thanks for doing this segment for me. So Ethan is going to read me some headlines, the beginnings of some stories here, and basically I'll just react to them. I guess this is kind of similar to like a Colin Cowherd Herdline News sort of thing that he does on the Herd on Fox Sports FS1. So I'm not trying to rip that off. I just think that's kind of a fun little thing, and we'll react to some headlines here, buddy. So what do you got for me?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So, for anyone listening, I'm getting my stories from AP News. So, if you want to check those out in your own time, feel free to do that. So, the first headline we're going with is Steelers sticking with Mason Rudolph at QB against the Ravens, even with Kenny Pickett available. So, in this news story, they were kind of talking about how a lot of the Steelers making it to the playoffs was dependent on them beating the Ravens, which it says that they did 13-3 on Saturday. Um, but they were kind of talking about the upcoming challenges that they were going to face with their next game. Um, they said that they'll be playing a defense that's allowed the fewest points in the league. So it sounds like Rudolph will have some challenges if he starts there.
So who do they play next week? Does it say who they play?
That's a great question. Let me find out for you. Let's see.
If not, I can pull up the Steelers schedule here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It does not say from what I can see.
So they play the Ravens actually this Saturday is what they do.
Oh,
Oh,
yep.
so
They
I
play the Ravens. Their record is 13-3.
correct. Okay, that's what it was. Yeah, okay, cool. We're
Apologies.
glad we cleared up that. No, that's okay. Yeah, so they played a really good game against Seattle last week. Um, they won 30-23. Mason Rudolph has put together two really impressive games in his last two starts. Kenny Pickett, I mean, they have to stick with Mason Rudolph. I don't know what their playoff chances are, but Mike Tomlin has now extended his streak of without a losing season. Like he's never had a losing season with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, but at some point you have to get over the hump, and so like neither of these two guys are the answer. Like going forward, I don't think Pittsburgh is gonna, if they make the playoffs, gonna do anything. I mean, they can maybe, depending on who they play, I guess it would depend on the matchups. But Mason Rudolph is, I think, at least right now, better than Kenny Pickett. But I would expect the Steelers to move off both of them next year, or you keep one of them maybe as a backup. But they're going to go get another quarterback in the draft next year, I would assume, and just retry, I guess, because I don't think either guy is the answer going forward. Mason Rudolph has had some starts over the years. He's had some good games like the last 2 weeks, and some not so good games over the years backing up Big Ben. So we'll see. But my overall thought is that the Steelers, they're not going they're not going to beat anyone in the playoffs if they make it. So
Bummer.
next story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I have one more for you from the NFL, and that is Jaguars hope to get QB Trevor Lawrence and wide receiver Christian Kirk back for the win and in finale at Titans.
Oh, a win and in situation. Yeah, the Jaguars honestly have been one of the more disappointing teams this year because they were, I think, 8-3 a couple of weeks, like a handful of weeks ago, and in firm position to, if they just keep doing their thing, be the number one seed in the playoffs potentially, or at least the top seed in the playoffs. And now they're in a win and in against Tennessee. That's pretty wild considering how good they were middle of the year. I know Trevor Lawrence has been banged up, but to be honest with you, I don't know if you pay Trevor Lawrence when he's still got a couple years on his rookie deal. So I'm obviously not going to be worried about it right now, but I am not sure that I would give Trevor Lawrence one of these massive extensions like Justin Herbert got or Joe Burrow got, where you're paying your quarterback 50, 55, 60 million dollars. I just don't see it. He's not healthy enough, and when he's been playing this year, like he hasn't been good this year. And actually, Alex sent me something a couple weeks ago where it was a comparison. First couple years of the career, Trevor Lawrence and Daniel Jones, who is the quarterback for the New York Giants, who just signed a big deal. So first 48 career starts, Trevor Lawrence is 20-28, Daniel Jones is 19-29. Their passer ratings are the same, 85 passer rating. Touchdown to interception ratio. So Trevor Lawrence has 55 touchdowns, 35 picks. Daniel Jones has 55 touchdowns, 33 picks. Passing yards and rushing yards combined, Trevor Lawrence has 1,200 and Daniel Jones has just under 1,200. And they both average 6.7 yards per play, whether that's a pass or a rush. So they're virtually the same quarterback through their first 48 games. And that's wild to think about because Trevor was a number one pick and we view him as a generational talent. And he has been nothing but disappointing for the most part through the first couple years of his career. But it's pretty wild that given how their season's gone, they're in a win and in situation. I would expect them to probably win, but if they get in the playoffs, they're another team that I don't think, unless things change drastically, I'm not sure they might win a playoff game. Other than that, I don't think they're going to have the year we all thought they were going to in the playoffs. So,
Gotcha.
but that's Ethan with the stories. So thank you, sir.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
thank you, thank you.
Thanks for joining the show, and we'll do this semi regularly if we can. So,
Sounds good.
All right, let's wrap up the show here. I really appreciate Ethan joining the show this week, and thanks for tuning in. Make sure you follow the show. Subscribe on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch this on YouTube as well. But we'll see you in an episode later this week. This is Where There's a Will.